The Asphalt Art program is administered by FC Moves, the Transportation Planning Department of the City of Fort Collins. The Paint Pot program is a grant-funded asphalt art project made possible through a grant from the National Association of City Transportation Officials. With special thanks to Bike Fort Collins and Jillian Betterly for programmatic support. This storytelling project is a collection of voices from the neighborhoods where the asphalt murals were painted. Several of the voices are Indigenous, Hispanic, and Latino community members with long generational ties to the neighborhoods called Tres Colonias, or the Spanish colonies. This episode features Marie Cordova Lucero from Alta Vista.
That's Maria Lucero. Was born the 9th, the 20th of 34 here in the hospital, Fort Collins Hospital. I'm native from here, the Spanish colonies, what we used to call it. My maiden name is Cordova. I had a white blouse with the name Eleanor on it. I don't know where I got that in it. I ran into my godmother and I told her, she says, I'm so glad you're wearing your name and your blouse. And I says, I hate it. And she looked at me and says, I'm sorry you do. She says, I gave you that name. I named you after your grandma. So I had to apologize to her that I didn't like that name. She was real tiny. She's just a little tiny little grandma. But she went around like me all day long. I got that from her too. My mother was from New Mexico. And I'm not too sure about my dad. Mother was kind of strict. She wouldn't let us run around in the neighborhood or anything like that. We had to stay in the yard. And Dad, he never had much to say. He was in the service. We were around. I really wasn't into anything, really. I wasn't really interested in anything. I did afterwards, way afterwards. I wish I would have been in running. Just running and stuff like that. But we never had toys. We used to have we used to look for little lids for plates. And then my mother lived, there was a farmer's territory behind my mother, so we used to get the matches that were burned out, wooden matches, and we used to make little fences with it. And then we used to get pinto beans for our plate jacks and dandy over. We used to, once in a while, to get away from Mom, not the tire of the bicycle, but the rim, we used to push that with a wire all around the colony. That was a lot of fun. No, I just stayed home with Mom and Dad, and I just helped Mother do whatever she had to do, laundry and whatever she had to do. I'd go to the store and shop for her because she didn't like to shop. So my dad there used to be a store over here, grocery store, Scrivener's. That's where he used to do all his shopping. And he had credit too whenever he didn't have a job. I don't know. I don't know how that happened because they had several houses that they had bought. Not big mansions, and then they would rent them out. But my dad worked. We all worked. We all worked in the beach. I was supposed to be at her first thing over here. I didn't have a way to go. For the church cherries and for the hoe. Well, when you come from my side where you can't go anywhere and have fun, because Mother was so strict. I was way old already the first time we went to see the fireworks. We'd never seen fireworks. I think I was maybe 15 the first time I seen a fireworks. works at the city park, and just ride the little trolley, and yeah, it was a little, not a whole lot. I think most of it was that we never, well, we were working. We couldn't be running around like nowadays the kids that go here and there, hop on this bus and on that bus, and we didn't do those things. We didn't. I don't think we had any buses running in them days. You think it was out today? That's the way it is when we worked on the fields. We wore these big straw hats. We had boots up to here, tie boots, and we had gloves, long sleeve shirts. It didn't bother. It still doesn't bother me, the heat. We used to do a lot of beats, but not. We did some beats here, but most of them were in Wyoming. He had a farmer that that hired him to do beats, so we were there most of the summers. That's why I really didn't do very much of anything else. Just work out in the field. For I don't know, for many years we did that. We used to come home after we did the harvest of the beets. We'd come home. And I think that's one of the times that I could think of that I got mad or stubborn. Because we used to go do beets in the summertime. And then when we were done doing the beets, we'd come home. And then we'd start school. But then we had to get out of school to go do spuds, potatoes. And in between that, I got behind in the school thing. I mean, my sister did fine, but I just couldn't catch up and do things. I was different. Never got arguments with one another that I can remember. They probably did want to beat me up, but no. My sister, second to the eldest sister, my sister Jo, she left when she took off when she was about 17. She was kind of like me. She did what she wanted. She didn't care what Mom and Dad said. She just dug out and started her life. The school I went to when I was little, that was in Andersonville. There was a school there. It was called Barton School. And from there I went to Franklin School. I never went to Remington School. I just shifted over to Franklin. And then from Franklin to Lincoln High School. And from Lincoln to the one on Remington, before college school there. That's where all my sisters graduated. I had 3 sisters that graduated from there and 1 brother. I never graduated. I got as far as the 10th grade and I quit. I'm stubborn. I got in a fight. I got an argument with the teacher and I said, nope, I'm not going back. It was supposed to be a test. And supposedly, when she walked out, I was giving the students the answers. So they all got good grades, and guess what I got? A big F. And so she went to her room the next day, and she says, you got to get an excuse from the principal. And I said, well, why? What did I do? She says, you know what you did. I says, well, no, I don't. So I had to go down to the office and talk to the principal, and I talked to her, and I told her what was going on, and she says, well, I think we better go apologize to the other teacher. And I says, no, I'm not. And she says, well, why not? And I says, because I'm not. That's just the way I am. I'm not going to do it because I don't feel guilty about anything. And she says, well, I'll tell you what. She says, I'll write you a note. You won't even have to tell her. I'll write a note, and I'll explain everything to her. You go up there and you take it to her. When I was in front of the principal, I looked at her and I said, you know what? I quit. She gave the little yellow slip, and I just tore it up in little pieces and I threw it in the trash. I said, goodbye. I'm done. I was so stubborn and dumb I was. And now I regret it, but it's too late now. And I didn't ever graduate. I only got to the 10th. That's bad, because everybody else graduates but me. I think about it now, and I said, gee, I could have had so much fun if I'd have just not been so stubborn and hateful. My mother told me, you get out that door, you go look for a job. Okay, I will. So I went, and I didn't have a Social Security number yet, so I had to go to the Social Security and get my number. And then after that, I got a job at Larry's, I think it was Larry's Lamb's Cafe. Lamb's Cafe was right there on College Street. And I was there only one day, and then I quit. I didn't go back the next day. And then another time, they hired me at the gamble store, just cleaning the little glasses, where they used to separate everything. Goodbye. I left the next day. I worked for a lot of women cleaning their houses. I worked for right there on the corner of the Fort Collins High School. Her name was Mrs. Haldeman. She used to be a social worker for the city, and Mrs. Combs. And I used to go to school with Mrs. Combs' son. And then I worked in a lot of places. I was hired to clean houses. On Friday nights, every Friday evening, Dad would have us kneel around the bed, and we'd all pray the rosary. Always. I remember that so well. Sometimes our knees hurted so bad. We had to finish the rosary. So I would look at each other and we'd start giggling. Why? We don't know, just giggling, And I thought, oh my, we're going to get it after the rosary. Yeah. Dad was real good with religion. Yeah, he used to read his Bible, and it was in Spanish, and I used to follow him, and that's how I learned. And I like it. I like reading. If I would like to get a Spanish, this nice little book and read, but I have Bible-istic that my sister gave me. But that's in English, so. I mean, we could talk to Dad because he understood, because he talked English. Mother never did talk English. We think she knew how, but she was just too afraid to talk English. After we grew up, we could talk to her in her kind of language, because a lot of people coming from Mexico. Where did you learn how to talk English? I'm native of this town. My father talks English. I said, so well, you know Spanish? I says, yeah, I know how to speak Spanish, because we talked it at home with Mother. But when my dad was working, he'd come home sometimes, and he'd sit in his car, and he had his Bible. I sit in the back seat, and Dad had the habit of going like that with his finger. So when he was reading it in Spanish, I was following him. And that's how and then as I grew up, when I got married, I started learning how to read in Spanish. Not very good, but I can understand the words in English, and I can translate them from Spanish to English or from English to Spanish. And the girls tell me that, my sister used to tell me, where did you learn to read in Spanish? This is just looking at Spanish words and then look at the English word, and then you figure it out what it is. That's what I know. I remember the first time we were all shocked one time, because my dad used to make homemade wine out of choke cherry wine. Oh, that's good stuff. But we used to sneak once in a while and taste it. We would just taste it. And one day, it was a holiday, and he says, let's see, put all these little glasses around the tip. We all looked at each other and says, what does this mean? We said, well, I don't know. We don't know what it means. And then finally, when we were ready, Dad, Went on and said, "What does this little glasses mean?" He says, "This is the first time I'm going to do it. It'll probably be the last time I do it. But I want all of you to taste my wine, because I know you're not all of the same age." He says, "But this is a treat for me to use on this holiday." Well, that was the only time. They used to walk to church all the time, though. And from the colony over to the Catholic Church on, what is it? Holy Family, what's the street there? Cherry Street and Grand? No, Cherry Street and, I don't know. You know my age, I already forgot a lot of things. Yeah, but we all used to go to church walking. We'd go down the railroad tracks, right through here. We used to walk to church. You know, when my dad was alive, he loved lemon meringue pies. I used to make, and I used to do them the real way. Yeah, he loved his meringue pies. I used to make pies. My mother liked Jiffy cakes, you know, the little boxes of Jiffy. That's the only, she didn't like frosting, she didn't like nothing, so I used to make them for her. But my daddy, I used to make pecan pies. I don't do that anymore. I forgot all that stuff. The stores got them now. The restaurants got them now. I don't have to do them anymore, and mom and dad aren't here anymore. But yeah, my dad just loved them. His meringue pies, I always remember. I remember one Christmas time, I got a present, and it was a little black dog. That was my favorite. And I don't know what happened to her. Yeah. When I was a child, we used to go around the colony with little bag, paper sacks, and we'd ask for Christmas. We'd say, "My Christmas," and they'd give us goodies. Oranges, apples, just candy, Christmas candy, you know, those that are. Nowadays, they don't do that anymore. And then, but not too long ago, they were still putting like tamales and Mexican stuff in the bags. Yeah, but we never did. I don't know when it really stopped. Must have been when I was about, I don't know how old I was when that stopped. Not too old, not too young either. Well, he was the oldest. My brother Maynard, he was in World War II, right? Two, yeah, because my dad was in one. My oldest brother, when he got out of the service, there was a bar over here. I think it was called Coles, I'm not sure. He went into the bar, and he was in there for a long time waiting for them to wait on him. They wouldn't wait on him. So finally he spoke up and says, "Hey, I've been here this long." He says, "How come I'm like, nobody's asking me what I want? Nobody's, you know." He says, "See that sign over there? White trade only." We had an older man, he spoke for us, and he knows what was going on then, when it was all, you know, racist like that. And my brother, and then he said, "No Mexican, no Mexicans." Okay? So my brother got mad, I guess, and says, "Let me tell you something." He told the bartender, "I'm not Mexican. And even if I was," he says, "why did you have that sign over there? My money's just as good as probably yours." He said, "You know what?" He says, "Did you serve for your country? Have you gone to the service and served for your country and fought for your country?" And the guy just looked at him, and so he just got up and left out. That's what he told him. "You don't serve for your country, you're the one that doesn't deserve to be here." That's how I remember my brother. Well, my brother, he was out of the service, but he was traveling from Denver over to Wyoming, and he flipped in his car, died. So, you know, it was pretty, I was about 14 years old when that happened, I think. My husband, he used to work. That's a different story, too. Well, he was in the service, too. He was away for a while. After I got married, I never worked. His name was supposed to be, they called him Daisy. It wasn't Daisy, it was Desi, Dario. Like Desi Arnaz, that name, Desi was his name. But everybody called it, I guess when he started school, they had asked him his name, and he said his name was, his mother went with him, I guess, and she said Daisy. So they just figured it was Daisy. But she never explained to them that it was Desi Dario. All right, let's see. Well, he had come over. His grandmother had come with her, one of her sons, and then he came over. The first time I met him, he was about 13 years old, and then after that, he went back to New Mexico, and then he came back, and we started going together. Oh, it's a long story. That's how, I just met him through his side of the family first. Yeah. I had 3 sons and 1 daughter. Jody's the oldest. He's 65, I think. And then there's my daughter. Her name is Daisy. And then I have and then Kevin, and then Corey. The 3 sons and 1 daughter. So I had. He was driving now we know that he was driving, he never told me though, they were driving a truck full of ammunition. He never told me. And then for almost 3 years, I hadn't heard from him. I didn't know what was going on. So one day I said, well, okay, I'll go to over here. He was over here somewhere at the army place. I went in there and I told him, I want to know what's going on. I said, I haven't heard from my husband for 3 years, almost 3 years. I says, what is he still in the service? Or did he walk out or what? And he says, no, we don't know. He said, we'll get in contact with his boss over there. And so then they wrote me a letter and they told me that he was okay, that he was still in the service. That's when I found out that he was still okay. I lived with my mom and dad then at the colony, and my little boy. We already had my first son. That's where I lived with mom and dad. And then when he came back, I was still with mom and dad. And I didn't go meet him. My little sister Vi called my mother on the neighbors because we didn't have a phone. And she called the neighbors because she wanted her to talk to my mother. And my mother said, why me? I don't know. So my mother went across the street and talked to her. It was my little sister Vi. And she told Mom that my husband was in Denver. He had just arrived. And that he was coming home. And so he thought that I was going to go down his family side. And I says, no. I told my mom, no. When he left to go to the service, he said, Mom and Dad, I'm leaving her with you. You take care of her. So I turned around, I said, okay. And they came, they begged me. They made all kind of excuses for me because one of the aunts worked at the Idea Cafe as a dishwasher or whatever. And I says, no. They went to my mom's house and, oh, your aunt wants you to go work for her tomorrow because she's not feeling well. And I says, oh, I don't think so. I don't think I can go work. And she says, he says, well, I don't know what to tell her when I get home. I said, well, just tell her that I can't. So she's okay. They had a little girl. She was my little sister-in-law, but they had adopted her. And she was so nervous, she didn't know what, because she knew that he was back. And I told her, don't you say a word. Oh, she was so nervous. She'd sit down, and then she'd get up, she'd look through the windows and everything, and her uncle, which was her dad, would tell her to behave, and she was just dying to tell him what was going on. So I finally told him no. I says, just tell her that I don't think I'm going to be able to. He says, well, let's go with us now. I said, I can. I said, I just wash my hair, and I don't go out when it's, wet. I says, I don't want to catch a cold. So they went back, and first one, here they come, the grandma and the sister, the little sister. They all came over to the house, and he was with them. I didn't come out. I didn't get out of I was already in bed. Me and my little boy were already in bed. And I knew they were there, but I just played dumb. I'm not going to get up. Then finally, I think my mom went in the room and she says, your husband's here. You better get up and see him or whatever. I'm not going to do it. I says, he didn't come home where he left me. I says, so now you let him suffer. So my mother went in, told him that I wasn't going to come out of the room, so he had to go in there. I taught him a lesson, but it's a big story about my husband. He's already gone. It's our hand, but he put me through a lot of, he was a good worker, but his money I went to the bar. So, we suffered a lot, me and my kids. They wouldn't like for me to say that, but they know more or less what was going on. A 65-year-old man, he knows. He died of heart failure. He was diabetic, and he had high blood pressure, and he wasn't doing too good, and I kept watching him. I could see his lips turning purple, and I kept telling him, you better go to the doctor. I said, you're not in good health right now. He wouldn't do it. Finally, we went to his mother's, and I told his mother, I says, Mom, I says, look at your son. I says, he doesn't want to go to the hospital and get checked. I says, his lips keep turning purple. He's not getting enough air. And he still drove himself over there. My mother-in-law lived on over the trail, and he drove all the way to the hospital. Well, I didn't know how to drive. I couldn't take him. He said, don't call the ambulance, so I didn't call the ambulance. So when he got there, later on, the nurse came out, or the doctor, I don't remember who it was, and he asked me if I was Mrs. DeSera. I says, yeah. I says, yeah. He says, how did you get here? I says, well, he drove. He drove? I says, yes, he drove. And he says, your husband is very sick. He's got an enlarged heart. And I said, well, because they wouldn't come out to tell me what was going on. I waited and waited. Finally, they came out and told me. That's why we were taking care of him. He says, it's a miracle that he even got to the hospital with his heart condition. He only died when he was 57. I've been a widow 30-some years. That was their dad's favorite thing to do. Drink, drink, drink. He was a good worker, though. He'd get up every morning, even if he was hanging over, he'd still go to work. But that was the money in the bar with the women. One time I went in there and I grabbed the money off the counter. He got mad at me. He said, what did you do that for? I says, because it belongs to me, not to them. I am your wife, not them. And then I bloused one of them. I kept telling him to stay away from my husband. That's my husband. I don't want you near him. Well, of course, she was already kind of high herself, and she just kept, going around and around. And I said, I told you. I'm warning you. Well, she didn't think I was brave enough. And I showed her. I didn't do nothing. She was all hysterical about it. And I said, well, I warned you. Don't let it happen again. One time I was already married. And my husband said, I feel like going to Sam's Place bar, and have a beer. He says, I don't know, okay. was sitting there. And he ordered 2 beers, one for him, me, and one for him. And who walks in? My dad. I just looked at him. I looked at my husband and I says, "Oh my goodness!" And I pushed my beer, my beer over to my husband. My dad walked up and said hi. We said hi, and he says, "Having a beer?" And I just didn't. And I says, "No." I says, "No." He says, "Well, does he drink 2 beers at the same time?" And I just turned off and gave me color in the book. He says, "That's your husband. If he wants to buy you a beer, it's your beer. You drink it. I have nothing to say. You're old enough, you're married." But I just remember that beer. I just shoved it on real slow. He said, "Oh, I didn't know your husband drank 2 beers at one time." I didn't know what to say. But no, we never went to bars. I mean, not when we were single, we never did. Oh, are you kidding? But after we got married, we had different owners. Yeah, right. Nobody owns me. Larry Lucero, that was my brother-in-law. Sammy Lucero, my brother-in-law. My 3 kids are all Luceros. My 3 boys. And 1 daughter. I never drove. Never cared to drive. Well, I did drive. I'm telling you this. But for my sisters, I used to do that. My sister Frances was a year older, a couple of years older than me. She always wanted to learn how to drive. So my dad used to work for farmers or do something. For a forestry, I think my dad used to work somewhere going towards Wellington. And she always wanted to learn how to drive. And so when Dad would only work so many hours, and then he'd come home real tired, and he'd go in the house, and she says, "Let's go." And I said, "Get the keys, let's go. Show me how to drive." "Show you how to drive?" She said, "I want to learn how to drive. Come on, let's go." So well, it's okay. I didn't even know whether it was a stop sign or a hole in the ground, but I drove her. I was trying to show her how to drive. And then she never learned how to drive that. But when she moved to Denver, she graduated here, then she moved to Denver and got a job over there, and she hired a teacher to show her how to drive to work and back home. Funny that the teacher told her, "Frances, I ain't teaching. I'm not taking you anywhere anymore. You know how to drive. You know all the signs and everything. You're just going to have to learn to do it yourself." So she did. And that was her lesson right there. The teacher quit on her. I went twice for my written test, and I passed, but I wouldn't go back. I wouldn't go for my... I don't know what it was, that I was afraid of the cars, or I don't know. And traffic wasn't that bad in them days. There wasn't that many people like nowadays. But I remember one time, where are we here? Over here there was a lumber store. And I remember one time I brought the car that far. And another time I had to go pick up my husband from the bar. I didn't know how to drive that, and I was big old trucks were coming down the highway. Ooh. But we got home. Everywhere I went, I had to walk. I didn't like to bother nobody. I still don't like to bother anybody. They kept telling me, "Well, walk here and call it." And I says, "Oh, if you just can't take me, I'll walk." "No, you're not walking." I never called a cab. I never called for this, where they pick up people and take them here. There, I walk. I've always walked. And that's one of my good things I like to do, because I've explored everything in Vermont, except now with all these new buildings coming up, and it's not Fort Collins anymore. It's college. We used to walk from the colony all the way to there was a school there. We used to go to school there. We'd get there with snow boots up to here, full of snow. Our noses are dripping. We were so cold from walking. But that's where we went to school sometimes. I remember one time the train was going by, and we were all walking behind each other like that. And then my sister said, "Oh, there comes the train. Everybody get over on this side." Well, guess who stayed on that side? I stayed the only one, and that train was coming. And they kept saying, "Cross the railroad tracks, cross them, hurry, you can make it, hurry, cross." I said, I'm not going to cross it and get run over. So I stayed on that side, and they all got mad at me. My older sister says, "Oh, so you're so stubborn." She says, "Why didn't you get on our side?" I said, "Because I didn't think I was going to make it. What if I would have tripped? If I would have got so scared I would have tripped? I'd have been run over anyway." Right? I used to walk to the grandma's, my sister's. I used to walk all the time to go visit her. I didn't call her nothing. I would just, like I say, I just get up and go. Sometimes when I'm halfway, I says, "Oh, darn it, I didn't bring my mask. Oh, I didn't bring no water. Oh, that's because I just dash out, and that's what they don't like, because I think about it, but then, I don't know, I just get sidetracked and I just stick off. I didn't like nobody to tell me what to do. I don't know, I just didn't like nobody to tell me what to do. And I still don't like nobody to tell me what to do. But I know I've changed in some ways. I've already changed. I can't beat it anymore. I could have done what I didn't do, but I was too stubborn. That was my only excuse I have. I think if I would have just, like I said, I was stubborn. I didn't want nobody to tell me how to think or what to do, you know? And now I think, I said, well, that was my fault. That was my fault. I should have just paid attention. That was just it. Paid attention and believed other people, I guess. I don't know. Listen to other people that are trying to give you an advice. That's it. Just listen and you'll get by. Don't be stubborn, because it doesn't help. I don't know. I don't really regret my life. I like it. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave. I tell, don't take me yet. I'm not ready. I don't want to go. I got too much fun to do yet. Yeah, so no. I like my story.